wine shop would not sell me the specific wine I drove 60 miles to purchase, so I made a mobile order of 10K and never picked it up. There's a specific wine I used to pair with food. The closest total wine that had it was a 60-mile drive, and it was storming out and I wanted it for the holidays because most likely was going to be cooped up inside. So I drive over. This used to be my typical Total Wine until I moved 2 counties away. Anyways, I go in and pick up the wine and get some other stuff for holiday parties. Was in there maybe an hour and it comes time to check out and the cashier asks me for my ID, so I give it to her and then she tells me she needs to see the ID of the other person I was with, so now I'm confused and say I'm alone. And she says, well, I have to go get my manager. Okay, fine. So he comes out to tell me that she told him I was with someone and they need to come back and bring their ID or they won't sell it to me. I told him I wasn't with anyone. He asks to see my ID, looks at it and says, well, unfortunately you look young. Are you serious? And he's like, you can come back tomorrow alone. I find it extremely disrespectful to tell someone they look young while you're holding their ID in your hand, and not to mention I've been shopping at that exact location for about 4 years and have never had a problem. So I told him about how I drove there and have been shopping there for years and that I even have a second form of ID, and he was just kind of giggling and saying no. So I left very angry, and it was late around 9 p.m. and then I had the about hour and a half drive back home in the rainstorm. So I was home pissed about it all night, and the next day I went into the one close to my house to get the other stuff I was getting. Unfortunately that one was out of the wine, that's why I didn't originally go there. They were pleasant as usual, actually beyond nice, and didn't even hit me, which just goes to show the other location was on some kind of power trip or something. Then I got an email from them to review my experience, which they send every time I go there, and I never do it, but I decided to select the location I had the bad experience at and give feedback on it. So I wrote exactly what happened, and then the next day I got a call from the store manager. Turns out the guy that night was an assistant manager or something. However, he was much more pleasant than the woman that called me. She was extremely rude and condescending and told me that she reviewed the cameras and that someone walked in with me at the same time and that made us a party. I told her I didn't know them. She said it didn't matter. So apparently people can't walk into Total Wine at the same time as you? Then she said that the employees were watching me and that the person left 30 minutes before I went to check out and they saw it. Okay, so? Also, if that is the case and that is your policy, why didn't you say something when you saw the person leave and we could have cleared up the whole situation right then and there, instead of continuing to allow me to shop for another 30 minutes and waste my time to know that when I came to check out you were going to deny it? So I told her even if that is the case someone can't leave a store? And she said no. To complete the transaction they would have to drive back with their ID. This made me extremely angry because even if that is the case and that is your policy, at least you can offer an apology for the inconvenience or something like that. Not just call me to argue and stir the pot. I was already kind of over it because it had been like 2 days, but just her whole attitude and nastiness about the whole thing was really insult to injury. So I decided to look up their policy, and their policy clearly states that this only applies to parties at checkout, so the rule is who is with you at checkout, which that makes sense or is at least more understandable. Another policy I read which was interesting was that any online order not picked up within a week they will issue a full refund to your original payment method. So my friends and I were sitting home drinking the stuff I had got at the other location later that day and telling them what happened, and they were all shocked. I used to work retail for a long time, specifically during COVID, and I know what an inconvenience it is to set up big curbside pickup orders because they take up a lot of space on the order shelf. So drunk and mad I decided to enforce their own policy on them and make a $10,000 order for the soonest possible pickup time, which they promise orders ready in 3 hours. Just give me a case. They had to get individual ones, and I ordered their whole supply of Tito's since it's popular and it's the holidays and I know people are going to be looking for it, and this Total Wine has its curbside order section in the front behind a counter where you can see it, and I know when customers saw it they would ask for it, and then they would have to explain how someone ordered all 238 bottles and they're back there on reserve. Then they'd probably get grouchy and ask for a manager. But the manager would be busy because I also made sure to order a lot of bottles behind glass, so they would have to run around with their keys scrambling to get this order ready. I worked retail and I know how much stuff like this throws off a schedule and annoys the managers. So I loaded up the cart and stopped when I got bored and placed the order. I got the email confirmation which specified that you have to wait for the pickup confirmation email and that pickup times aren't guaranteed, so I thought for sure they were either going to cancel the order or call me or something. And something interesting that is sent with the email is a pickup policy that states specifically the recipient of the order needs to be 21 so you can have other people in your car not 21? Well, 5 hours later I got the pickup email. It took them longer, but I was still surprised. Then later I got a pickup reminder email. Then 3 days later a second reminder. Then 7 days I got my final notice email, and then day 10 I got a phone call. It was the manager acting like a completely different person this time, asking when I was coming for the order. He asked for me by name and my name was on the order, so I told her yeah I went to pick it up and was told I looked too young, so I just went to the other Total Wine and picked it up, the same stuff there. So then she was mad and said, "Are you seriously not coming to pick this up?" Lol, restock. I just said nah. She hung up. LMFAO, when your higher up asked you why your store had to refund someone $10,000, explain to them what you did. LMFAO. They were supposed to automatically cancel the order at the 7-day mark, but didn't. She called me at the 10-day. So I called their customer service line to cancel it, and she told me some stores wait to the end of the month to do it. I'm assuming the manger was trying to hold out on refunding to end the year on a better number. Retail does that. I made them cancel it right then. LMFAO. My college's parking situation was a money grab, so I found a loophole that enabled me to park anywhere without paying a cent. This situation was just desperation at first, but it sure felt like revenge by the end. Once upon a time I was a sophomore, living in an awful college-owned apartment building on the edge of campus. This was a private school and most of my classmates were wealthy, but I was not. I was working 3 jobs and taking full-time classes. I managed to buy a car over the summer, but right before the semester started it broke down. I had no money for the repairs, but I did know a local mechanic who kind of took pity on me and let me keep the car in his lot while I scraped together enough money so at least I didn't have to pay to park or store it. It took me until early November to get the money together, so most of the semester. When the car was finally repaired, I went to the public safety office at school and asked about registering my car so I could get a spot in my building's lot and a permit to park on campus. I expected this to be straightforward. Unfortunately, this was instead the beginning of a gigantic mess. The guy at the desk said he couldn't give me a spot in my own lot because it was full, but he could give me one in the lot for an off-campus complex that's like a 30-minute walk from my apartment, in the opposite direction of all my classes. I said thanks but no thanks, made a mental note to figure out my own parking solution closer to home, and moved on to the next thing, a permit to park on campus for classes. But this was a non-starter. Without a residential parking spot, I could only register to park in the commuter lots on campus. The commuter permit was like 5x as expensive as the residential ones, I guess because the lots were bigger and closer to buildings. So while this guy clearly thought he was doing me a favor by offering a residential student a commuter permit, there was just no way I could afford it. In desperation, I was like, okay, give me the off-campus spot 30 minutes away, so I can at least get a residential campus permit for classes. We start down that path and he quotes me the cost. It's well over twice what I expected. I'm like, WTF? Turns out, because it was so late in the semester, any new cars had to be registered for the next semester, too, paid up front. Also, I had to pay the permit fees for the entire fall semester. Nothing was prorated. And of course, registering a car late had a fee attached to it that grew for each week of the semester that had already passed, as a penalty for supposedly parking without a permit prior to registering. This could only be waived if you could prove that you just bought the car, which of course I hadn't. On top of all that, registering a parking spot for a building you didn't live in also had a fee attached to it. And last but not least, in order to put myself on a waiting list to possibly get a spot in my own lot for the spring semester, there was yet another fee. At this point, I'm beaten down by the impossible, exorbitant, expensive maze of nonsense. I just hand the blank paperwork back to the guy and walk out in a daze. Almost in tears. I'm already late for class, so I'm like, screw this. I drive to the building and park right in front of the door in a commuter lot. I assume I'll eat the cost of a ticket. At this moment I don't care. But nothing happens. Still feeling tired and defeated by life, I drive to my apartment building after class and park in a guest spot. Again the next morning, no ticket, no nothing. So, I decide to basically just ride this out, buying myself time to work out a better solution. About a week later, I got my first campus parking ticket. Having never had a car on campus until recently, I'd also never seen these tickets before. Right at the top in bold letters, students, staff and faculty return payment for this ticket to XYZ office. If you are a guest, please ignore this ticket and enjoy your visit. I had a sudden thought no one knew this car was mine. I had never registered it with the school, so it wasn't in their system. Maybe I could get by pretending this car belonged to a guest for the rest of the semester. It was only a couple weeks. In the final days of the fall semester, I learned that after 5 unpaid tickets to the same car they run something to figure out who the owner is. Busted. I got a letter in my campus mailbox reprimanding me for having unpaid tickets. I was kicking myself, assuming I'd stupidly caused additional expensive grief, deeply regretting the dumb things I did because I was broke. However, Pushing through the panic, I read to the end. Interesting. This was clearly a form letter, which assumed the student car in question was actually registered on campus. Turns out the penalty for having 5 tickets is that those tickets convert into a 2-week permit suspension. Or, you can pay a fine to end the suspension sooner. So, 5 tickets automatically convert into a suspension of a permit I don't have anyway. If I park a car while suspended, I get a ticket. So what this letter is telling me is that I'm essentially just in the same situation I was already in. Regardless, I'll be ticketed if I park in campus, except that also, I no longer owe the school money for these tickets. I just need to serve out this suspension of my non-existent permit. I accept their terms. A couple weeks later, I'm getting ready for spring semester. Still basically broke, but I scrabbled together enough for the parking spot and the permit. I go down to public safety to register my car like a good citizen. However, I learn that because my registration was suspended last semester, I'm now at the end of the list for a spot in my lot, so there's no way I'm getting one. Also, this is now the point where the unpaid tickets do actually have to be paid as a fee, which has to be cleared to activate my registration. If I can't pay that by the start of the semester, I'll also start incurring the other weekly fee for registering late. I'm basically going through round 2 of the same terrible runaround from last time. I feel like I'm losing my mind, and I'm still traumatized from the first experience. Everyone else in that office was just waltzing in with their parents, talking for 2 seconds and swiping a credit card, while I'm over here on my own feeling poor and humiliated and alone in the world. I can just barely afford this registration to begin with, and these fees put it totally out of reach. So once again, I walk out without it, super pissed about how expensive and annoying they're making this. I realize these fees are just going to continue snowballing and I'm not going to be able to register my car this semester, either. I accept my lot in life. So begins the cycle, which continued for the rest of my college career, of me not registering my car and just parking wherever the hell I want. Eventually I rack up 5 tickets, I get the form letter, the tickets are converted to a fee, applied to the cost of my next semester's registration, and my non-existent parking permit gets suspended. After 3 suspensions they suspend my permit for the rest of the semester. Strangely and fortunately for me, as long as I never register my car, it seems that I never have to pay the tickets or the fees they turn into. Towards the end of the fall semester of my senior year, shortly after my imaginary permit was given its 3rd semester-long suspension, I received a new letter. This one says I'm prohibited from registering a car on campus the following semester because I have too many suspensions. So as usual, I don't. And I continue parking wherever whenever. About 3 weeks before graduation, I got a final letter, this one delivered on my car, with a ticket. It is not a form letter. It has "Please just stop" handwritten on the outside of the envelope. It says I'm banned from ever registering a car on campus, in any future semesters, because of an egregious number of parking violations. I laugh and then graduate and live happily ever after. Never ever paid a cent.